What if I told you the very thing you've been taught to suppress is actually the gateway to your highest potential? Imagine this: buried within the shadow of your own desires lies not shame, but power, raw and untamed. Most people run from their sexual impulses, terrified they'll be judged, or worse, consumed by them. But what if avoiding them is the very reason you're stuck, frustrated, and quietly miserable? In this speech, we won't tiptoe around the truth. We'll drag it out, screaming if we have to, into the light. You'll discover why your desire isn't a flaw to hide, but a signal from your unconscious screaming, "Wake up." A force that, if harnessed, can elevate your creativity, deepen your self-awareness, and unlock the life you've secretly craved. We're diving into a truth so uncomfortable it'll make your ego squirm. So brace yourself, or better yet, ask yourself this: are you brave enough to explore the part of you that polite society told you to bury? Because once we open this door, there's no going back. Repressed sexual desire is not merely a private struggle. It is a psychological time bomb ticking beneath the surface of our daily lives. Most people do not realize that what they push away, deny, or label as inappropriate doesn't disappear. It hides in the unconscious, only to resurface in forms that are far more destructive and confusing. In the realm of the unconscious mind, sexual desire, when left unacknowledged, becomes a distorted force. It doesn't just vanish, it mutates, influencing your choices, your emotions, your relationships, and even your sense of self. You may think you're in control, that your mind is guided by logic or values, but beneath the surface, it's often the repressed desires that are pulling the strings. Sexual energy is among the most powerful life forces we carry within us. It's tied directly to our vitality, our creativity, our hunger for connection, and our need for expression. When we repress this energy, due to shame, fear, religious conditioning, cultural rules, or unresolved trauma, we essentially cut ourselves off from a vital part of our humanity. But the psyche does not accept censorship without consequence. That repressed energy leaks out in disguised forms: sudden mood swings, anxiety, obsessive behavior, passive-aggressive tendencies, or unexplained guilt. You may snap at a loved one without knowing why. You may sabotage your success in ways that feel irrational. You may feel hollow even when everything in your life appears to be fine. These are not random emotional disturbances. They're echoes of unresolved inner tension caused by the denial of your deeper instinctual drives. When sexual desire is denied, it becomes a ghost inside you, haunting your thoughts and coloring your interactions. For example, have you ever felt an intense, irrational reaction to someone who seemed completely harmless? Or found yourself obsessed with a celebrity, a stranger, or even someone completely unavailable to you? These aren't accidents of attraction, they're projections. The unconscious, unable to express its repressed longing directly, finds substitutes and attaches itself to symbolic figures. You're not falling in love with a person. You're craving the freedom to feel something you've forbidden yourself to feel. And until this internal division is addressed, these patterns continue, often sabotaging your ability to form deep and meaningful relationships. The discomfort doesn't stop with emotional confusion. Repressed sexual energy often morphs into compulsive behaviors: binge-watching, overeating, overworking, even addiction. These aren't just bad habits, they're diversions, desperate attempts by the unconscious to release the tension building up inside. The body and mind, overwhelmed by unexpressed longing, seek any outlet, even if it's self-destructive. People may call it laziness, lack of discipline, or low motivation, but in many cases, it's the suppressed desire silently draining their inner fire. It's no coincidence that when people begin shadow work, facing and integrating the repressed parts of themselves, they often report a sudden burst of energy, focus, or creative flow. That's not magic, it's liberation. The irony is that most people believe repressing desire makes them morally superior or more spiritually pure. In reality, the opposite is true. Repression disconnects you from yourself. It breeds inner war. You begin to distrust your own body, your thoughts, your instincts. You become fragmented, walking around in a shell of politeness, while your real self cries out beneath the surface. This internal tension affects not just your mental health, but your physical well-being. Chronic stress, headaches, insomnia, and even autoimmune issues have been linked to the psychological strain caused by emotional repression. The body holds on to what the mind refuses to process. In relationships, this disconnection can be devastating. When you are not in touch with your own desire, you either withdraw or project it onto others in unhealthy ways. You may chase people to fill a void you don't fully understand, or push them away to protect a fragile internal balance. Intimacy becomes a battleground of unmet needs, miscommunication, and unspoken expectations. Genuine connection requires emotional honesty, and that starts with acknowledging the full spectrum of your own inner life, including your sexual nature. When you repress this, you bring a mask into every relationship, and masks cannot love or be loved. Culturally, we are taught that desire should be controlled, sanitized, even punished. From a young age, we are bombarded with mixed messages. Desire is natural, but don't act on it. Sexuality is human, but hide it. Passion is powerful, but dangerous. This creates a split in the psyche. One part of us wants to be accepted and good, while the other part rebels, craving freedom and raw experience. The more we deny this conflict, the louder it becomes. The unconscious doesn't forget. It stores every rejected feeling, every suppressed impulse, and eventually it demands to be seen. You may try to distract yourself, numb yourself, rationalize it away, but repression always finds a way back to the surface, often in moments of crisis. Many people confuse repression with discipline, but there's a vast difference. Discipline involves conscious choice and awareness, while repression is rooted in fear and avoidance. Discipline says, I understand my desire and I choose how to express it. Repression says, I deny my desire exists and I'll pretend it doesn't affect me. One leads to strength, the other to fragmentation. Repression is not strength, it's suppression of life. It denies the very currents that make us feel alive, inspired, and capable of intimacy. You cannot build an integrated self while denying the core of who you are. The uncomfortable truth is that your sexual desire is not your enemy. It's your compass. It points to where your passion lives, where your creativity hides, where your real hunger for connection breathes. By ignoring it, you don't become wiser or purer, you become disconnected. And in that disconnection, the unconscious takes over, leading you down paths you never consciously chose. The price of repression is not just emotional, it's existential. You lose the ability to know yourself fully. You become a stranger to your own inner world. Integrating desire into your conscious awareness is not about indulgence or impulsivity. It is about reclaiming your wholeness. Most people are trained from childhood to suppress their desires, especially those tied to sexuality, labeling them as dangerous, shameful, or unworthy of expression. But when desire is exiled from consciousness, you don't eliminate its power, you lose control over it. It begins to operate in the background, influencing your choices, distorting your relationships, and weakening your sense of purpose. True strength and self-realization come not from domination over your desires, but from understanding, embracing, and transforming them. In that process, you don't become a slave to your instincts, you become the master of your inner world. Desire is not a flaw to fix. It is a message. It speaks to you in the language of emotion and longing, revealing what your soul craves but cannot yet articulate. When you allow yourself to explore what you truly want beneath the layers of social conditioning and fear, you begin to access a form of energy that is raw, creative, and deeply human. Integrating desire doesn't mean acting on every impulse. It means listening to it, tracing its roots, and using its intensity as a tool for self-inquiry. The more honest you are about what stirs you, the more connected you become to your authentic self. And authenticity is the foundation of real power. People often think that controlling desire makes them virtuous or in control, but what they are really doing is splitting themselves in half. The divided self is not empowered, it is exhausted. A part of you yearns, while another part polices that yearning. This inner conflict drains energy and creates anxiety, guilt, or numbness. But when you acknowledge and integrate desire into your conscious life, the tension dissolves. You no longer waste energy suppressing or denying what is already part of you. That reclaimed energy becomes available for focus, ambition, intimacy, and creativity. You no longer fear what you feel, you learn to channel it. Sexual desire in particular has a unique intensity. It is not simply about physical pleasure. It is a metaphor for merging, for creating, for surrendering control and experiencing transcendence. Many spiritual and artistic traditions have recognized this. The creative spark that drives innovation, art, and discovery often springs from the same reservoir of energy that fuels desire. When this energy is repressed, it stagnates. But when it is consciously engaged, it becomes a bridge to deeper self-awareness. You stop living in reaction to your desires and start directing them with purpose. This shift is where real transformation begins. Desire can feel chaotic because it disrupts the illusion of control. It reveals parts of you that you may not want to face, the part that craves connection, passion, vulnerability, or even dominance. But facing these desires does not mean acting them out blindly. It means giving them a name, asking why they exist, and understanding what they are truly trying to communicate. Often, beneath a sexual longing is a deeper need to feel alive, to be seen, to feel safe in surrender, or to break free from routine and limitation. These are not shameful needs, they are human needs, and when acknowledged, they can lead you toward more conscious, intentional choices. There is a hidden strength that comes from integrating your full emotional and instinctual self. You become less reactive, more centered. You stop running from feelings and start using them as guides. In doing so, you develop what some might call emotional intelligence, but on a deeper level, it's existential intelligence. You know who you are not just from your thoughts, but from your capacity to feel without being overwhelmed, to want without being enslaved, to express without losing control. This is where confidence comes from, not from suppressing desire, but from integrating it so thoroughly that it no longer controls you in the shadows. In society, most people wear masks that hide their real longings. They play roles, speak in polite tones, and hide behind productivity or status, all while their deeper selves remain untouched and unknown. But the person who dares to look within, to understand and embrace their desires without judgment, begins to radiate something rare: presence. This presence is magnetic because it reflects a person who is at peace with themselves. They are not pretending. They are not trying to impress. They are rooted in truth, and that truth commands respect. Integrating desire also enhances relationships. When you know what you want and are not afraid of it, you can communicate more openly. You're no longer projecting unmet needs onto others or expecting them to fill voids you haven't acknowledged. You engage with others from a place of clarity and confidence rather than confusion or dependence. Intimacy becomes more honest, more profound. You're able to give and receive without manipulation, without fear of exposure, because nothing inside you is hidden anymore. You've made peace with your own depth. It's important to understand that integration is not a one-time decision. It is a practice. The mind is complex, desires shift, new fears emerge, but with each moment of honesty, each act of self-reflection, you deepen your understanding of yourself. You become less afraid of what you feel. You realize that desire, far from being a threat to your integrity, is actually the path toward discovering what truly matters to you. In fact, many of life's most powerful moments, falling in love, starting a new passion, taking a leap of faith, are fueled by the very energy we are so often taught to suppress. The journey of self-realization is not about reaching some perfect state of detachment or moral superiority. It is about becoming whole. Wholeness requires that you bring every part of yourself into the light, even the ones you were taught to hide. When you integrate desire, you begin to understand your motivations at their root. You are no longer moved by unconscious hunger, but by conscious intention. You become someone who acts rather than reacts, who creates rather than consumes, who knows rather than avoids. Denying sexual impulses is often seen as a sign of discipline or moral integrity, but beneath that polished surface lies a much deeper psychological cost. When you push away your most primal urges, you don't destroy them, you distort them. Sexual energy is not a separate part of you. It is intricately woven into your emotional, creative, and spiritual life. When this energy is denied expression or even acknowledgement, it doesn't simply disappear. It retreats into the unconscious and begins to corrode your inner foundation from the inside out. Over time, what you thought was strength becomes weakness, not in your actions but in your spirit. Your creativity dulls, your purpose fades, and your inner strength withers beneath the weight of invisible repression. Creativity thrives on raw, emotional energy. It is born from the parts of you that feel, ache, long, and desire. Whether you're writing, painting, building, or leading, the impulse to create comes from a place of inner movement, a stirring of something alive within you. Sexual desire is one of the most intense emotional currents humans experience, and it carries with it the potential to ignite the imagination. When that current is dammed up, when you pretend it isn't there, the energy doesn't vanish, it stagnates. Instead of flowing into your projects, passions, and visions, it becomes stuck, twisted, or worse, it leaks out in unproductive or even destructive ways. You might find yourself uninspired, bored, or endlessly distracted, not because you lack ideas, but because you've silenced the very voice that generates them. The denial of sexual impulses often stems from early conditioning, religious teachings, cultural taboos, parental shame. Many grow up learning that desire is sinful, dirty, or dangerous. The body becomes a source of guilt, and the natural urge to connect, feel, or express is wrapped in layers of fear and self-judgment. But what's rarely acknowledged is the price of this internal war. Every time you deny a part of yourself, you shrink your capacity to live fully. You teach your subconscious that certain feelings are forbidden, and in doing so, you build a mental prison. Over time, that prison starts to feel like home. Your thoughts become more rigid, your emotional range narrows, and your creative instincts begin to die quietly in the background. Purpose is not something you simply decide, it's something you uncover. It emerges when you are deeply connected to yourself, your truth, your values, your instincts. Denying your sexual impulses creates a disconnection between your mind and body. You begin to live from the neck up, analyzing life through thoughts and logic while your deeper instincts remain buried and ignored. This disconnection makes it harder to feel the pull of your own purpose. You might chase goals that look impressive on the outside but feel hollow once achieved. You might stay in jobs, relationships, or routines that keep you safe but stifle your soul. Without access to your full emotional range, including the desires you've been taught to suppress, it becomes incredibly difficult to recognize what truly matters to you. Your inner compass is still there, but it's muffled under layers of denial and fear. Inner strength does not come from control through force. It comes from integration. When you are at war with a part of yourself, you cannot be whole. And wholeness is where strength is born. Sexual desire is not a weakness to overcome. It is a source of vitality that, when acknowledged and respected, deepens your resilience. It gives you access to passion, not just in intimacy, but in life itself. It's what drives you to pursue beauty, to chase meaning, to fight for what you love. When that passion is denied, your emotional core becomes dulled. You might still function, wake up, go to work, meet obligations, but you do so in a state of quiet resignation. The spark fades. And without that spark, your ability to face life's challenges with purpose and endurance diminishes. There is also a spiritual component to this denial. In many traditions, sexual energy is seen as sacred, not because of what it produces physically, but because of what it awakens psychologically. It calls you to confront your vulnerability, your longing, your capacity for surrender. It asks you to engage fully with your body and emotions, to be present in ways that the thinking mind often resists. When you deny this, you deny the fullness of your humanity. Spiritual growth becomes hollow if it is built on the repression of desire rather than the integration of it. True spiritual power arises when you can hold complexity, when you can recognize that being human means carrying both light and shadow, both control and surrender. The denial of sexual impulses also subtly breeds resentment and fear, not just toward others, but toward yourself. You begin to mistrust your own instincts, you question your feelings, you censor your thoughts. This internal suspicion fragments your self-image, making it harder to experience confidence or clarity. You might find yourself triggered by others' confidence or freedom, not realizing that what bothers you in them is what you've buried in yourself. This projection can erode relationships, leading to conflict, jealousy, or isolation, all rooted in a refusal to acknowledge your own inner life. Eventually, the cost becomes visible. It shows up in chronic fatigue, low mood, creative blockages, emotional numbness, or an ongoing sense of dissatisfaction. You may not be able to name the problem, but you feel it, like a background hum of disappointment, a constant craving for something more, even when you have everything you thought you wanted. That craving is not always for sex itself, it's for aliveness, for truth, for connection with the parts of you that have been silenced. The denial of sexual impulses is never just about denying sex. It's about denying your life force, your intuition, your ability to be fully alive and fully yourself. Shadow work is the process of diving into the parts of ourselves we often avoid, reject, or suppress. Those desires, thoughts, and feelings we've been taught are unacceptable or shameful. Among these, hidden lust stands out as one of the most powerful and deeply buried elements of the human psyche. It is rarely spoken about openly, yet it influences decisions, shapes relationships, and drives behaviors in both subtle and destructive ways. Hidden lust, when left in the dark, doesn't stay dormant. It becomes distorted, obsessive, or misdirected. But when brought into awareness through shadow work, it transforms into a force of conscious power, creativity, and spiritual depth. Lust is not merely a carnal urge. At its core, it represents raw, unfiltered longing, a deep desire to merge, to feel alive, to escape limitation. However, most people grow up being told that such desires are dangerous, immoral, or inappropriate. The result is not the eradication of lust, but the exile of it into the unconscious. There, it does not disappear. Instead, it festers, often erupting through compulsive behavior, intrusive thoughts, unhealthy attachments, or emotional repression. Shadow work invites us to stop running from this part of ourselves and instead meet it head-on with curiosity, courage, and honesty. In doing so, we don't lose control, we gain it. Confronting hidden lust through shadow work does not mean indulging every fantasy or acting out impulses without discernment. It means turning inward and asking, what is this desire trying to tell me? What part of myself have I been afraid to face? Lust often masks other emotions, loneliness, fear of intimacy, a craving for power, or the hunger for connection. By exploring the underlying motives behind our hidden desires, we begin to understand ourselves not as broken or deviant, but as complex, multifaceted beings. This clarity becomes the foundation for personal transformation. The human psyche thrives on integration, not fragmentation. When we divide ourselves into good and bad, we lose the ability to harness the full spectrum of our energy. Shadow work is the act of stitching together what has been split, reclaiming the energy trapped in denial. Hidden lust, once accepted, reveals itself not only as sexual energy, but also as life energy, becomes fuel for ambition, creativity, innovation, and love. By confronting what you fear inside yourself, you reclaim access to your deeper instincts and wisdom. You are no longer controlled by what you avoid, you are empowered by what you understand. People often fear that if they acknowledge their shadow, especially in the realm of lust, they will spiral out of control. But the opposite is true. What remains hidden holds power over you. What is brought into the light can be seen, managed, and transformed. Lust that is denied becomes compulsion. Lust that is explored becomes conscious choice. You begin to see patterns in your relationships and behaviors that once felt mysterious or overwhelming. You understand why you chase unavailable people, sabotage intimacy, or feel empty after momentary pleasure. With awareness comes the ability to change. This process requires brutal honesty and emotional maturity. It is not easy to admit to lustful thoughts, secret fantasies, or past behaviors that feel shameful. But shame only grows in silence. By speaking your truth, even if only to yourself in a journal or reflection, you strip that shame of its grip. You discover that your desires, while perhaps surprising or intense, are not unique in their existence. They are part of the human condition. The goal is not to rid yourself of these feelings, but to mature them, to understand them, shape them, and direct them in ways that serve your highest self. Shadow work also helps dissolve the projections we place on others. Often, the people who trigger or fascinate us sexually are mirrors of the qualities we've disowned in ourselves. We might envy their freedom, resent their confidence, or become obsessed with their allure, all while failing to see that what draws us to them is what we've repressed within. By reclaiming these projections through shadow work, we take back our power. We stop searching for completion in others and begin cultivating wholeness within. This makes our relationships more conscious, more grounded, and more authentic. Moreover, as we do this inner work, we develop compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others. We realize that everyone carries a shadow, that everyone struggles with unspoken desires, unresolved fears, and hidden pain. This understanding creates space for deeper connection, free from judgment or idealization. We begin to see people as they are, not as who we need them to be. We start relating from a place of awareness rather than unconscious need. In this way, shadow work not only transforms our inner world, but elevates our outer life as well. There's also an alchemical quality to this process. Lust, like fire, can destroy or purify. Left unchecked, it can consume relationships, damage reputations, and fracture identities. But harnessed with consciousness, it becomes the fire of transformation. It burns away illusions. It melts down the rigid ego structures that keep us numb and disconnected. It forges a new version of the self, more honest, more alive, more capable of embracing both light and dark. This is not the path of perfection, but the path of integration. It's where healing becomes wholeness, and where wholeness becomes power. Ultimately, the transformation of hidden lust through shadow work is not about morality. It's about liberation. It is about freeing yourself from the unconscious scripts that have been running your life. It is about stepping into full self-awareness, where nothing within you is denied, and everything within you is brought into relationship with your higher self. You stop being a passenger to your desires and become the author of your life. You stop fearing your depth and begin using it as a source of insight, creation, and connection.